Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into an experiment that went, well, terrifyingly wrong. It asks a question that really gets to the core of who we are as human beings. So that's the big question, right? And today, we're going to look at a super famous and super controversial experiment that tried to find the answer. It's a story all about power, who we think we are, and what happens when those lines get, well, really blurry. All right, so let's set the scene. It's 1971. A psychologist over at Stanford University, a guy named Philip Zimbardo, he has this question that he just can't shake. He basically wanted to figure out what's more powerful, our personality, the stuff inside of us, or the situation we find ourselves in. So are we really in control, or does the environment kind of dictate how we act? And to find out, he and his team decided to do something pretty extreme. They didn't just hand out surveys. Nope. They built a whole new reality. Yeah, they literally built a fake prison right in the basement of the psychology department at Stanford. We're talking cells, an isolation room, the whole shebang. They wanted it to feel completely real, totally inescapable. It wasn't just a movie set, it was basically a psychological trap. And for their subjects, they found 24 male college students. And this part's important. These guys were all screened. They were healthy, both in body and mind. So we're talking about your average, everyday, well-adjusted students. Okay, now here's the really crucial part. How did they decide who was a guard and who was a prisoner? A coin flip. That's it. It was completely random. At the very beginning, there was absolutely no difference between the two groups. It was all just chance. So the plan was for this thing to run for 2 whole weeks. But, things didn't exactly go according to plan. Nobody, and I mean nobody, could have guessed how fast the line between just acting and actually becoming would just vanish. The guards got all the gear to make them feel powerful. They had these military-style uniforms, wooden batons, but the mirrored sunglasses, those were a stroke of genius, psychologically speaking. They made it impossible to make eye contact. And when you can't look someone in the eye, it's so much easier to stop seeing them as a person. Now, for the prisoners, it was the complete opposite. Their identities were just taken away. They were these weird, uncomfortable smocks, a chain on their ankle, and, this is key, they were only called by a number, not their name. Their entire sense of self was just erased. And at first, it was all kind of like a play. Everyone was just acting. But then, it changed really fast. The guards started getting seriously authoritarian, and some of them were just plain cruel. They were making prisoners do push-ups for no reason, taking their beds, playing these awful mind games. It got dark, quick. And the prisoners, they fell into their roles too. They tried to rebel at first, but that didn't last. Soon they were just passive, helpless. You could see the stress and depression setting in. It's like they totally forgot this was just an experiment. To them, it was real, and they were trapped. So yeah, in just a matter of days, the game wasn't a game anymore. It was reality. These weren't students anymore. They were guards and prisoners. And that basement, that was their whole world. Things got so bad, so psychologically damaging, that the whole thing just started to unravel. It was completely out of control. There was no way it can continue. I mean, look how fast this all happened. Day 2, the prisoners rebel. Day 4, the guards are using serious psychological tactics, just humiliating them. By day 5, a prisoner has a full-on mental breakdown and has to be sent home. It escalated way faster and way more intensely than anyone could have possibly imagined. So that 2-week experiment, it lasted just 6 days. They had to pull the plug. It was just too dangerous for everyone involved. And here's a wild part of the story. Zimbardo himself, the guy running the whole show, got sucked in too. He wasn't a researcher anymore. He was the prison superintendent. It actually took someone from the outside, his partner, Christina Maslach, to come in, see what was happening, and be horrified. She was the one who said, "You have to stop this. What you're doing is terrible." It was that outside perspective that finally burst the bubble. Okay, so after all that chaos, what was the point? What did we actually learn from this whole shocking mess? Well, the big takeaway was pretty mind-blowing. It seemed like the situation was more powerful than the person. The system itself, the power of those roles they were given, just seemed to completely take over their own personalities and morals. It turned these normal college kids into either cruel guards or totally defeated prisoners. But we have to be clear about this. The experiment has gotten a ton of criticism over the years. I mean, besides the obvious psychological damage, people have pointed out that Zimbardo might have actually pushed the guards to be tougher. So were they acting naturally or just doing what they thought the boss wanted? And ethically, wow, you could never ever do a study like this today. It just wouldn't be allowed. But that actually points to its most lasting impact. Even though it was so flawed, it was a huge wake-up call. It's because of this experiment that psychology now has super strict rules about how you can conduct research with people. So, in a strange way, its awful failure was a huge win for the future of science. Which leaves us with a really kind of haunting question, doesn't it? It makes you wonder if that line we draw between good and evil is really as solid as we like to think. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, any of us could be capable of doing terrible things if we were put in the wrong situation. So, whether you think it was a deeply flawed study or a brilliant look into the human psyche, one thing is for sure. The Stanford prison experiment is a chilling reminder. It reminds us that the situations we're in and the roles we're asked to play have an incredible amount of power over us. And that power can change who we are a lot faster than we think.